Hey guys, I'm Garret.G3 Instagram here. Got my man Kula out, Brian Kula with Kula Sports Performance. Got Brandon Terrell with Upswing Foundation, and we're having a sit down. So, for you guys that don't know really kind of how that works, is we're going to sit down, we're going to show you, kind of give you a glimpse into what high level guys look like when we're talking business, talking shop, talking life's challenges as a man, and what it's like to do business in today's climate. So, Brian, welcome. Pleasure to have you. Brandon, thank you. So we had a couple really neat, things happen today. We took a drive. We looked at a new location, toured some stuff with some commercial realty brokers, and tell us a little bit about thinking about branching off on the West Coast here. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. We're gonna bring Kula Sport Performance to California.
All right.
So yeah, it's been a fun couple of days out here looking at for some facilities and meeting some new great people, and we're really excited about the potential of what we can maybe do out here.
Sure. Now, I mean, that segues with the 49ers and McCaffrey, and a lot of you guys, might not know who are watching, but Brian, he's number one strength and conditioning coach for McCaffrey, who's apparently the best in the league right
That's
now.
right. That's right.
So you tell us a little bit about that and what it's going to be like to have a location here on the West Coast and so on and so forth.
Sure. Yeah, I've been working with Christian now for 7 years as a professional. I actually got to coach him in high school.
Okay.
So I got a unique relationship with him. He's a great kid. He's having an outstanding year, and I don't know, just kind of to be able to come out into the market that he's playing in now would be, I think, a great thing. We had looked at that in Charlotte as well when he was out with the Carolina Panthers,
Sure.
and now that he's out here, I think he's really found his stride and he's doing well, and I'm excited to kind of be a part of that. So I think coming out here to California is kind of the natural move next.
Yeah, that's great. And so not only did we tour a potential location for Kula Sports Performance, but also your new, kind of spin-off franchise model, licensing model of your system, right? Speedtown Express. And so, today we stopped by, looked at a 24-hour fitness. Now tell us a little bit about kind of the unique franchise opportunity that you've created and the alliance you've forged with 24-hour fitness.
Yeah, it's actually a story that is rooted in training. Actually, I trained a gal 25 years ago that's now involved with 24-hour fitness at a high level, and she actually gave me the idea to put some Kula Sports Performance inside of 24-hour fitness. So we formulated a model, kind of an express version, Speedtown Express, where we do some kind of speed lab, more speed development kind of stuff inside of a 24-hour fitness. And right now we're opening 4 in Colorado. We'll do 12 down in Texas. And then that's got scalability to be out in every 24-hour fitness on the West Coast, down in Florida, New York, all over the country.
Got it.
Yeah.
So the way I understand it is like your secret sauce that you developed is Kula Sports Performance with a lot of the high-level athletes, world-class athletes, whether it's soccer, football, you're even doing NBA players now, basketball. You've taken that system and that process that you've created and really launched it into the Speedtown Express. So was the idea to kind of get yourself out of the middle and really scale a system, right? And open up Speedtown Express as a means to perpetuate that system for others?
Yeah, I mean, I think our goal, our vision is to try to help as many kids as we can, right? I mean, we got this, what we think is a pretty good model to make kids faster, stronger, more powerful, prevent injury. And to be able to do that, we wanted to be able to scale. And so for me to kind of step back and figure out a way to do that in these smaller locations across the country made a lot of sense. And, we'll see. We had a little proof of concept to go here, but it looks like it's going to be pretty successful.
That's awesome. And so speaking of helping kids, we got Brandon here with the Upswing Foundation. And Brandon, in the Colorado location, how many kids have you guys sponsored to go to the Kula Sports Performance and really, train with the man himself here?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I met Kula almost a year ago through the Upswing Foundation, who I'm working with. And really, like our thing at Upswing was we want to give kids world-class experiences. We want to give kids who don't necessarily have the resources to work with the best. We want to give that access to them. And so we knew this guy's the best, right? There's no better person in the country that trains young people and just speed and performance. And so we actually have, through Upswing, around 100 kids, a little over. If you look at the teams that he's been training with, going through his training, working with his team on speed and agility. But I think for me, it was like, okay, that's awesome, but that's in Colorado. Mm-hmm. Like, I brought him out here, one, to meet you and just help with the business side, but I want to be able to have him out here in California. I want to impact kids' lives out here. And so here we are, chopping it up, trying to figure out how we could make it happen.
Yeah. So, I specialize in business systems, processes, how to scale businesses. So Brian and I are sitting down talking today about Speedtown Express and his strategic alliance he created with 24-Hour Fitness. We're talking about Kula Sports Performance, the secret sauce, my company Kraken Media Productions, and like how we can really document, what he's doing on a day-to-day basis. Did you ever think that you'd really become the premier strength and conditioning coach for all the best athletes in the country, as a high school football coach?
No, not I didn't, and I don't even know if I still see myself as that, to be honest with you. But I just worked hard over those years to try to, I always wanted something better, something more. Didn't think we were always doing it the right way, and I think we stumbled on some stuff that's pretty good, and so here we are now. And that's humbling to hear that. I appreciate that. But we're still trying to get better. I mean, every day, growth mindset, trying to make sure we're still, doing all the things that we should be doing. And I try to grow, every season of life, even with, the big time athletes. Every year looks a little bit different because you're always trying to get better.
Right. Now, one of the things, I interview a lot of guys, and I think back to my business success and failures and all the challenges I've had throughout the course of my career and so on and so forth. But, one of the kind of common themes I've noticed over the course of time is the most successful guys aren't necessarily like focused on being successful. They're focused on doing a great job, working really hard, figuring things out, right? Creating complex systems that nobody can kind of reproduce because it's like your baby, your brainchild. So, you went from a high school football coach, then the pandemic hit, then you started your own business, right? And have kind of skyrocketed and catapulted into the guy who's before us today. So tell us a little bit about, like, I imagine, and I don't want to put the words in your mouth, but 30 years a high school football coach or 20 years or whatever it was, did you ever have your eyes set on becoming the best strength and conditioning coach, or what was the process like for you?
I don't know. I mean, I think I always had my eyes set on doing the best I could with what I had. My dad had a saying. He used to say, whatever you are, be a good one. And that's kind of what I always did. Whether I was a high school track coach, high school football coach, I was going to try to be the best at that I could be. So when kind of, I guess God presented, some challenges in our world with the pandemic, I just decided to, I'm going to keep training kids, and that turned into business. And then, I don't know much about business, but I guess I'm a businessman now. So I'm going to try to be the best at that I can be. And, I've been very fortunate in my life to have mentors and people come into my life that have challenged me, that have helped me grow, that have shown me the path. And I think that's what you have to do is just, keep your eyes up and, have that vision of seeing yourself that way, but then know who you got to put around you to get there.
Well, that's the name of the game. And it's like, water seeks its own level, and the coaches need coaching, right? And, I always go back to, Elon Musk has a coach. He has a team of coaches, right? These high-level athletes that you train, like McCaffery, I presume he's got 4 or 5 coaches. He's got doctors, specialists, strength and conditioning, nutrition, offensive coach, on and on and on. And so, everybody needs high-level coaching. And if you haven't acquiesced yourself to the fact that you need somebody better than you to become the best at what you're doing, then you're missing it, right? Like all the best guys have a coach. From the Knights at the Round Table, back in the days of yesteryear, they're sitting around, they've got a whole team of advisors, right? They're being advised on all sorts of things from, money to territories to conquest and on and on and on. And I mean, this is the way that it was, done from the very beginning. And I think as a society at large, we've really lost track of helping each other, right? So there's a great verse in the Bible that talks about iron sharpens iron, right? And what that means is, when we all sit down together on a high level, we build each other up. We make each other better, And so I think that starts at the top, with guys that are really doing great things and moving mountains and so forth, but then trickles down to the bottom. And so, segue back into Brandon with the Upswing Foundation and what you guys are doing with the youth sponsorships, right? If we don't help those youths early on and get them accustomed to being coached, then when they become successful, entrepreneurs or business owners or whatever they're going to become, even workers, they've got to be coachable, right? And so I think it starts at a young age. And so I really admire the way you guys are incorporating the youths and sponsoring them and bringing them into, Brian's system here in order to really perpetuate, the ideas of athletics and discipline and hard work and all the things that have made our country great,
I think it's important to just hit on that, like talk to him when you were coaching at a Christian school, football, and you were also the AD for a little while, right?
That's right.
Tell us
what's AD mean? So
athletic director. He was the head of the athletic department there at the school. Tell us, you did some special things there. I want you to share with Garrett and the people listening some of the stuff you did with the kids. And
Sure. Yeah, I was actually an assistant athletic director there. We had kind of a tiered structure in the athletic department, and it was one of the places where I probably grew the most as a professional. I kind of thought that I'd won a few state championships. I thought I kind of knew what I was doing, and I came over with some of these high-powered coaches that came in from California. They've become some of my best friends. But they just really knew how to do things, at a really high level. And so again, look around you, read the room, watch these guys. And so I learned a ton from those guys. One of the things was, our spiritual development program, I think is what you're trying to touch on. And, we won, like 38 state championships while I was there. I was a part of, some football championships, some track and field stuff. And that was all good and great. But my best stat from Valor Christian High School was baptizing 87 kids in my time there.
Wow.
We would incorporate that into our program as part of our end of the year. We would do some, spiritual mentorship throughout the season, and then ask kids if they wanted to be baptized, and we would do that on the track in a horse trough. And
wow, okay,
that was really cool, obviously, because at the end of the day, the business stuff's awesome, right? And we want to go to the moon with it. But we hope we've done some heavenly work while we're here with the kids as well, and so that's a pretty important thing to me.
Wow, that's amazing. So really, you found yourself in this position of power, right? But you knew what kind of got you there, and I'm sure that was your faith and a lot of the precepts that the Bible teaches and how you rely upon that, Sure. And then you utilize those to help others and bring them to the same kind of fold in which you found yourself.
Sure. Yeah.
Wow. That's really neat, man.
Yeah.
That's really neat. I think about that a lot. It's like, okay, so we've all been given these gifts, right? And it's like, all right, well, how do we use those to build other people up, right? How do we use those to, glorify God and really become the men that God wants us to be, right? And so oftentimes we use those gifts to like do all the wrong things, And so I think it's important we have these conversations because, it's difficult to reflect and see the good that you've done without dialoguing about it. And I think through that dialogue, we can really perpetuate doing more, right? So tell us a little bit about, I'll segue that into doing more because, Kula's got this great app that he's, just launched version 2.0. Yep. And, I think it's important to talk about the expanded reach you're going to have buying through this app, right?
That's right.
So you got Speedtown Express and now you got your new app. So tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, the app is we've used it for remote programming for schools and athletes across the country, and it's been a very successful tool for us to be able to get our system into more hands. And we just feel like there's so many youth athletes out there that need help, that need advisement, that need guidance. Right. And we've taken the time and the energy to put into coaching cues and videos and programming that we can now disperse in a mass quantity.
Yeah.
And we're really excited about it. The new version's it's much more user friendly, a little bit sexier, and we're excited to kind of get that out the door here very, very soon.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so, you've got the ability to reach thousands and thousands of people, right? So,
right.
According to our conversations earlier today, you're meeting with a lacrosse organization that's got 2,000 users potentially, right? We've got, high school football, college football. It's really unlimited.
Sure,
You could have 100,000 people on this app overnight, right?
Could only hope.
Yeah, and look, and so I think you touched on some really important stuff. So you're teaching the speed, the training, the athleticism, right? But it's also a forum for you to incorporate your coaching kind of methodologies and not only help other coaches, right? Where you've got a platform for them to tap into and ask others for help, such as yourself that's got a lot of experience, but also for the parents to go, right? And have, mastermind sessions with some of your team of coaches. And then, I think it's a really great forum also to really perpetuate some of the foundational principles that you've helped, teach throughout the course of your career into these student athletes, right? Because for me, a lot of you guys might know, but, my little guy's 7 and he's national champion, ranked 2nd in the country, wrestler, so on and so forth. And people always ask me, like, well, do you want him to be a pro fighter? What's wrong with you? You've got him in boxing, kickboxing, right? Wrestling, jujitsu, like, what martial arts are you going to do next, right? And, for me, it's not about like him being a pro fighter one day. It's about the discipline and like what we learn buying through that process, what we learn when we lose, what we learn when we win, what we learn through sacrifice and diet and nutrition and dehydrating ourselves a little bit to make weight and all these challenges that this sport creates are real, and they're really indicative of life's challenges, right?
Sure.
So do you see your app as a forum to kind of launch the coaching methodology that you did as well?
Yeah. And that's been one of the challenges, right? When you go online and, you want to try to get some of that relational equity to the athlete and some of the, you're pouring into them. It's hard to do online. But we feel like we, have created a system now where it's a little more customizable and we can inject some of that stuff in where they feel like they're getting a little more of that coaching experience. Cause, as I at least know it, as a coach, we talked about this a little bit today. The methodology is special. We think it's unique and it works. However, the relational skills, that coaches have to be able to get that information to the athlete and motivate, is equally as important. And so, to be able to have options within the app where they can, access a coach or a mastermind group or something like that I think it'll be very unique.
Right. Yeah. For me, I mean, I want community, right?
That's
Within
right.
there's a few dads that have national champion wrestlers in the country, and boy, wouldn't it be great to have a community with those guys, right? And just share information. I mean, that's how my son got good. Is I was humble enough to walk up to the best guys and be like, "Hey, will you teach me?" Right? Like, what do you guys eat? What do you guys train? How do you train? Right? I mean, I always ask the same questions. I posted the other day. I call it the 5 W's. Right? It's like who, what, when, where, why, and the 6th one's an anomaly. It's how. I posted that the other day. Some guy says, "Oh, well, like the how's not a W." I'm like, "Well, that's the 5 W's plus the how, buddy." You gotta love it when these guys find fault with something, right? But asking questions is the name of the game, right? I mean, that's how I got good at anything I'm good at. Frankly, granted, it's only a couple things, but the point is, that's what it was for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Talking about like just asking for help and that type of stuff. Some of the challenges you face as just a coach, but also trying to be just a high performing man in this country as a Christian. Talk about some of the challenges and stuff that other high performing men and coaches could relate to and maybe learn from you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think high performance is it's a ledge, right? With a long fall. Down, and you got to be really careful and to achieve at a high level. And I'm so thankful that my wife often will, remind me of what's important and, cause it's very easy to get off and, get out on that ledge. And, I always tease, I say, "Hey, we're out there building an empire." And, she'll say, "Can't we just build a really big city, instead of an empire?" And, I think that's just the balance, that you need to have people, speaking into your life and making sure you have life-work balance. And, our challenges have been, I'd say in business, they've been few. I mean, there are some. I think I probably masked some of those with some of the success that we've had.
Sure.
But, there's certainly been challenges and there's times when, you have to move a facility or you get involved with something that turns out to not be as good as you thought it was going to be. And, but that's just business. That's life, ups and downs and how you manage them to, stay kind of emotionally detached from that and make good decisions and, do what's best for the company. Not just necessarily what's best for yourself. Is I think probably the way to, at least try. And I'm not saying I do a great job at it. I have a lot of sleepless nights, but I think, it is a challenge sometimes.
What about you, Garrett?
Well, I suffer from the lack of work-life balance, right? As a guy that's a serial entrepreneur and I've got, multiple businesses. I mean, I'm on my phone all day, right? So, what I've, found that helps me is I set like dispensations of time, right? It's like, okay, from 6 to 8, I do this. From 8 to 10, I do this, right? From 4 to 5, I do this. And so, I just kind of have these non-negotiables where, certain aspects of my life suffer, if I'm going to train my son for 2 hours, right? Like people were trying to get in touch with me and there's emergencies, but I literally don't attend to them, and I set that time frame and all I do is work out during that time. I'm not one of those guys, if I'm working out, I'm on my phone, right? It's like I'm focused on working out only. If I'm doing estimates, proposals, or marketing or sales or whatever I'm doing, I'm just focused on that, right? I don't try and do all this other stuff. And so, for me, it's just setting that dispensation of time, making sure it's on my calendar and just focused on that, right? And while it's true, I want to be pulled this direction or that direction, I just don't allow myself to do it. I stay real disciplined. Just like a diet, right? It's like, here's my 5 meal preps today. It's all I'm eating. Like, and God willing, I'll keep it together and not, with kids in the house, it's hard, right? It's like, okay, well, my son's eating ice cream. It's like, well, I want to eat the whole half gallon, right? It's just what it is. So, just setting those dispensations of time and being very regimented and disciplined, just like a diet or exercise routine. I'm sure you can relate with exercise, right? It's like, here's your routine, dude. It's not more reps and sets. It's not less. It's do this specific workout, you know?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and well, that, you know, to tie that into what we do for our business is passing that same kind of balance on to the athlete.
Yeah.
Right. And teaching them more isn't always better. And, you know, I think that's great advice though, just to set aside time to not, you know, not be distracted for, you know, personal reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about kind of like your training style and the old school way of training. So, you know, I was a high school football player and we went through, you know, quote unquote hell week and they ran us in 106-degree weather till we were puking and throwing up and dehydrated, you know, and we got through that hell week and had, you know, rashes and you know, rolled ankles and all these injuries, and it was kind of the survival of the fittest mentality. Like whoever was standing at the end of hell week, like you made the team and you were on point, right? So tell us kind of like how that mindset shifted a little bit and how you do things, because I think it's important that, you know, sometimes less is more, right?
That's right.
So.
Did we play for the same high school football coach? I think we may have. Right. No, you know, really for us, like, you know, I try to not be too far on one end of the spectrum or the other. I definitely think there's been a trend towards, you know, less is more, and rest and recovery has to be an important component of training. And so, you know, here's the example that I give. You know, we often hear, like, let's say a basketball coach, they get beat in the fourth quarter, right? They kind of let down, they got beat in the fourth quarter. So what's the coach do? They go back the next day and they run the dog tar out of them, right? And that's just kind of the natural MO of coaches. So they take a team that's already beat down, they beat them down even further. And so the physiology around that is that you can never reach high performance when you've suppressed the central nervous system, when you've suppressed and the body is fatigued and tired. So what we like to do is we like to train you in a state of, you know, where you're fresh and you can have high output, and we can reach into that 98, 99, 100% range, which then moves the needle for maximum velocities. Maximum velocities of sprinting, maximum velocities of swinging a bat, maximum velocities of swimming. You know, it doesn't really matter. Sport agnostic. Maximum velocity can increase, you know, and move the needle for an athlete. So changing the mentality from, hey, we're going to just do more work than everybody else, to doing the right kind of work is really what differentiates our system from many others. And it's a trend that's really hard to penetrate with the norm, the old school coaches. I grew up with an old school coach. I survived all of that kind of training. But it doesn't necessarily mean now. I mean, you know, we know cigarettes kill you now, and so we try not to smoke. You know, it's like if we know that, you know, running multiple gassers at a practice is going to suppress your ability to high perform, we probably wouldn't do that. But we're still kind of in a learning curve of athletes, you know, and coaches trying to, you know, to understand that is the case. You know, I mean, Mr. McCaffery, you know, we don't have high volume training weeks. We have very low volume training weeks, but they're very high output. And that allows him to move, you know, kind of we call it a tether from max velocity increases sub-max velocity. So they have the ability to move efficiently for longer periods of time. So it appears to be fitness. It appears to be, you know, but what it really is just they're moving and it's fun. Kids love it. You know, kids love to run fast. They love to know how fast they're running by, you know, recording and ranking their, you know, how fast they're running and how high they're jumping and things like that. And that's really our approach, is to show them a different way to get to an end result that, you know, hopefully is a little bit better than where they were.
Right. So what I hear you saying is if you run a 4.40, you got to hit that 4.3 one time in order to get there again. Is that basically
that's kind of it? Yeah. I mean, you have to be exposed. I mean, any training, right? You do some training. You know, we all do some training. It's adaptation, right? You have to present a stimulus that causes adaptation. So if your stimulus is always 70%, then your adaptation is going to be 70%. So you got to have, you know, present stimulus at 100% to get 100%, and that starts to move the needle on your high levels, which then also ultimately impact your low levels. And every athlete can benefit. You know, even your son, he's a wrestler, right? And you would think, well, wrestlers, they're in a, you know, I don't know what the diameter of a wrestling circle is, but it's not very big, and they don't run necessarily. But by doing that, it trains their central nervous system to move faster. So his shots are going to be more effective. His sprawls are going to be more effective. You're impressed that I knew a shot and a sprawl, huh?
Come on.
But so yeah, that's our philosophy, is just, you know, to really teach how to rest, how to recover. Kids nowadays, especially with old school coaches, are just they're fatigued. They got cortisol levels out the, you know, wazoo, and it's our job to kind of try to bring that back and get them to a state where they can high perform.
It's funny. I was just talking with the football coach the other day, and we were talking about one of the teams, the opponents, and this one particular coach who isn't liked very much, and he happens to be the conditioning coach, and he's having these kids do bear crawl, one-handed bear crawls, and all these things, and we're just sitting back like, you know, like, when are you going to be bear crawling football, right? And I think that old school mentality is part of kind of what has broken and fed that, like, that masculine, that, like, this is, if you can't perform at that level, which not most men can, like, you're not a man. Right. And I think that's part of what you're doing is kind of combating that.
Well, and that's why I think it's so important to have the mindset training as an add-on to the physical performance, right? Because I think back to running gassers at night, right? It'd be, you know, raining, 8:30 at night. The parents are waiting in their cars with the heater on, right? And we screwed up in football practice, and we're running gassers in the rain, right? And that taught you something about yourself, right? That taught you mental discipline and resolve and really a commitment to never quitting under any circumstance, right? And so while it's true from a performance-based standpoint, that wasn't really, you know, the most effective approach, it did do something to my mindset that was like beneficial, right? And so, you know, I think, you know, with all the science and technology and the mesocycles and the different, you know, modern, you know, methodologies of training, those are great. But also I think that old school approach to just go until your, you know, wheels fall off is a lost art, right? And so I think that has to be augmented with, you know, some mindset training and really talking to these young athletes about, like, hey, look, you know, here's how you need to view things, like, on a macro perspective, because they're not going to get that by getting ran till 9 o'clock. You know, they're called CPS if that happens these days, right?
Exactly.
So, you know, it's that balance, I think, is important.
Yeah, you do. And I mean, I grew up in a mentally tough household, you know, like my dad was old school and we did a lot of that stuff. And you know, there's energy system development where you have to have, if your kid wrestles, he's going to have a level of cardio fitness and things like that you can develop through, you know, certain channels. It's just you know, we don't want to overdo it. We want those athletes to be able to high perform at the same time. And so, yeah, I think a balance is a great way to put it.
Right. Yeah. And just understanding, like, you know, that winning mentality, right? You know, we used to have a saying when we go into, I used to corner for some pro fighters and stuff like that. And it'd be like, if anybody in the camp talks about an injury today, like, it's over, you're out of here, right? Like, you only think about winning. It's, you know, you don't think about a losing mentality. And so, like, my little guy the other day, he was going up against one of the best kids in the country, and he's, you know, intimidated and a little scared, you know, and he says, hey, Dad, is it okay if I lose? And I'm like, well, it's always okay if you lose, but, like, now you just lost, right? Because if you think that way, then you're going to lose, right? And so I think this whole, you know, kind of mental game and the way, you know, winners think and the psychology of sports and stuff is super important, you know. So I'm anxious to hear more about kind of like how you implement the coaching as an add-on into the app, and how you, like, tie the strength and conditioning in with that, not only for the athletes but also the coaches as well, because many of them come from a different mentality. So, you know, I think in talking with you offline, I'm really impressed by how you get the old school approach and the value of that, but then utilize the technology for, like, the real results and the explosiveness, you know.
Yeah, I think it's having that growth mindset that we were talking about, right? You gotta, you know where you came from, know where you're going, know what's good, extract what's good out of both, and put together your system and formula. And I think, you know, getting to be able to talk to the coaches and athletes and help them understand, right? It's just a learning thing, right? If they can understand what you're trying to get to, then it's going to have more effect for them. And not that you need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? I mean, a good hard work ethic is not a bad trait for anybody to have. But, you know, to maybe be a little bit more efficient with your work, right? We're all business guys. We're all, you know, shredding it at both ends all the time. And if you can, you know, if I could tell you, you could be 15% more efficient by doing X, would you do it? I mean, you probably would. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is say, hey, instead of doing X, maybe we could do Y and do it a little different and get the same result, but it saved you, you know, an injury or a risk, you know, here or there. That's really kind of the approach, is just showing a better way.
Yeah, it reminds me of, like, the Pareto principle, right? That it's like 80% of your profits come from 20% of your efforts, right? And then vice versa. And so it's like, well, how do you really focus on that 20% effort, right, to get the 80% profit? If you told me, hey, like, whatever your net income was last year, I'll give you 80% of that, but you got 80% of your time back.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
I'm in, right? Like, teach me. I want to coach. Anybody's out there listening, if you can coach me to do that, I'll sign up. I'm ready. Like, please, you know. And so, but again, that's because I'm coachable, right? Because I understand that I don't know everything. I understand that I need help in a lot of aspects of my life. And so, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, you've obviously had mentors and coaches and these other guys. Is there any one person in your life that you've really, you know, that really stands out to you, that's helped you kind of become the man that you are today?
Sure. Well,
is it?
I mean, I think coaching was a family business for us, right? Like
Okay.
my grandfather was a coach, a state championship coach, my dad. And then I followed in those exact same footsteps, right? So we kind of have this lineage of coaches that, and family, really family, that were teachers and educators that just cared about kids. And that's all I ever knew growing up, you know, was people who wanted to pour into kids and make a difference in their lives. And so it just happened to be that I loved sports, and that made a lot of sense for me. I remember one time in college thinking, maybe I should go into business. You know, I kind of want to make some money someday. These teachers, they don't make any money. But ultimately, you know, drifted back into that and spent 27 years doing that, and don't have 1 minute of regret over it, you know, of the amount of lives that I got to, you know, interact with, and the people, special people I got to connect with, and
kids baptized, et cetera.
Absolutely. That's all, you know, so that's kind of the family business, you know, that I got into. And then I just, from day one, I just always wanted to be good at what I did. And so I often would just, you know, do my own research, go and reach out. And so I mean, I have 100 mentors. You know, I think the one thing I did well as a young professional was, I don't know everything, so I'm going to reach out to people that know more than I do.
Sure.
And I had Mark Rogie, who was my first employer at Greeley West High School, that I got to kind of, you know, be mentored by, and then Rod Sherman and Brent Wieselmeyer and all, you know, all these guys at these different places that I got to work at. And some of them were in positions of leadership. You know, they were my boss, but then others were just colleagues, or maybe they worked for me. You know, you know, I think we can all learn from people that even work for us. So I feel like I've had just amazing people in my life that have, you know, kind of helped me get to this, you know, at least this position now.
Right. So I think that's important, you know, in terms of being men and fathers and establishing legacies and stuff like that. Right. So here, you know, sits before us one of the, you know, highest level strength and conditioning coaches in the country right now. Right. But it took two good men and their entire life to cultivate you.
That's right.
Right? I mean, think about that, right? So you got your grandfather and then your father, and these guys sacrificed their lives for coaching and the betterment of the youth and helping people, right? And then all of a sudden you're third generation, and you finally cracked the code after almost a lifetime of doing it, right? It took you almost a lifetime of doing it.
Right.
So, you know, I think that's really neat, because, you know, when I think about, like, you know, these families and the lineage and the legacies, right? And it's like, you know, it all starts with one good dad, right? And it's like, hey, great granddaddy Joe was the man, you know? And then it's like, then his son really stepped it up and tried, right? And so as men, I think we're really obligated to you know, cultivate the children's lives that God's given us, whether they're sons or daughters or what have you, in order to really help groom them into being the best version of themselves that they can be, right?
That's right.
And so that can really be seen, you know, after 1, 2, 3 generations. Similarly, you know, in the Bible, we talk about generational curses. That could be seen as well, right? You know, it gets worse, right? Like, hey, great granddaddy Joe is an outlaw. Then his son became an outlaw. And pretty soon, you know, the lineage died off because they all failed, right? And so, you know, out there as men, we have to make a decision who we want to be, who we want our offspring to be, and then really cultivate that relationship and teach our children the things that we were never taught, right? And so I think about that a lot, you know, as I parent, and, you know, like all other people, you know, my kids are probably watching. They're like, yeah, sure, Dad, you fell short here and there or whatever, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, that's true, I did, you know, but I'm trying to do better, you know? And so that's what it's all about, right?
That's right.
You know, just learning from our mistakes and getting back up and persevering and really engaging in all the things that sports teach us, you know? So speaking of, you know, sports and teaching methodologies and stuff like that. So Brandon, tell us a little bit about kind of like what the goal is in terms of sponsoring, you know, is it at-risk youth or underprivileged youth, or is it some of the best kids in the country that don't have the financial means to actually make it?
I think the biggest thing is there are a lot of talented kids out there that just don't have the support around them. Right? They just don't have them. I look at myself. I was a top performing athlete, the best on the baseball field, best on the football field. My family, like, I had family, but they're all working, right? And they didn't have any extra. So it was like, and I also grew up in a community that they didn't have no training facilities, right? We had some low budget coaches that were, if I'm being quite honest, smoking meth and dope, you know, behind the bleachers before they came. Like, that's how I grew up. And there's still a lot of that. And so I think for us, like not every kid's gonna to go play at the college level. Very few ever make it to the next level. But there are a bunch of kids out there that can at least get that college level, and we know what education could do for them. So for me, it's like finding the kids that have that work ethic, have that mindset, are willing to overcome every obstacle in their way, and just go support them. Whether it's through the physical and speed stuff Kula does, whether it's through the mental health support, the nutrition, financial support. But like, I want to go a mile deep in a kid's life. I want to find a kid that wants to work, right? Unfortunately, we live in a culture where a lot of people want that quick success. They want to be at the next YouTuber or video gamer, whatever it may be. But there's a lot of kids that want to work every day. Look at your son, right? And so just find those kids that don't have that resource, don't have that awesome dad or granddad or coach in their life. Find them, give it to them, stay with them until they get to college. And at that point, we'll probably be learning from them.
Gotcha. So it's like a mentorship program, a sponsorship program. You guys are footing the bill to get into Kula Sports Performance and other different, camps and what have you in order to facilitate their athletic success.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, that's what I want to do, right? Like with the Upswing Foundation, we have programs similar out here. Like my biggest thing is just finding networking. You talked about gifts and what God's gifted us with, and knowing those. Like I feel I've been gifted to network and connect with people, identify people who are good at things, and so building a network. I have a network of people that could help other people.
Yeah.
So now I need to just go find the kids
that need the help.
Coach.
Yeah.
Got this kid. Can you help him? Yep.
Yeah.
Coach, Garrett, can you help this guy?
Right. Yeah.
I really appreciate what you said about the kids that want to work too, because I mean, even though we've developed this great system and have all the equipment and knowledge capital that we bring,
right?
Kids still got to show up and work. I mean,
100%.
Christian McCaffery, as talented as he is, that kid shows up and works.
Yeah.
And he's very diligent about, all the things you talked about of diet, nutrition, and sleep and rest, recovery, and, all the things. And that's all components of the system, right?
Sure.
And he's also hyper talented, right? And so, he has that going for him. But, to your point, is the kids still have to show up and want to execute on what, it was a business meeting we had with our team last week of just execution is an important component to the plan. The plan is good. We know the plan's good, but without execution, the plan sucks. So that's I think the kids have to understand that in the training space as well.
But I think like where are they learning that, right? I feel like for like Garrett, your audience, you have a bunch of high performing men or men who want to be high performing. Like what kind of fathers are you? What kind of role, like what kind of work ethic are you instilling in your kid?
Yeah.
I see how you work with little Gage,
right?
That kid knows how to work, right? Obviously, I was away for decades, so I missed over 10 years of my kids' lives. But I'm instilling that work ethic. Like when we do things, we do it the right way, and we just give it our all, right? And I think a lot of parents, a lot of fathers, they're not leading by example.
Yeah,
and that's where the problem lies.
Well, it's like so I grew up in a single parent household. My dad died when I was real young, and my mom, she used to give me this list when she'd leave to go to work, and she'd be like, "Here's the deal: like have it done by 3:00, right? Or you're not going anywhere. You're grounded for the whole week." And that was the conversation every day. So every day I had this threat of being grounded for the entire week if I didn't achieve my list of work, right? And she would be like, "Look, everything you do unto the Lord. So if you wash the car, pretend it's the Lord's car, right? Like do a great job. Like take pride in the work that you do, right?" And that taught me so much because, now I'm either like hot or I'm cold, right? Like I'm not going to go wash the car if I'm not going to do a great job at it, right? I'll just run it through the drive-through. But anything I do, I'm going to do it unto the Lord. I'm going to really work hard at it, And I teach my kids the same thing because if you're not going to do it with pride and be able to stand tall and say, "Hey, I washed that car," right? Just don't do it, And so, I show up and work. I grew up with a kid who's probably the most talented guy in the entire world, I mean, I'm talking, he's a genetic freak. He could bunny hop a bicycle over a trash can, right? I mean, run like a 4.40. I mean, just the stock issue, like the epitome of genetics, But he was lazy. He never wanted to do the work, And it used to piss me off so bad because everything that I had in my life, any athletic success, I had to work my ass off for it, right? And so I used to be like, "Geez, man, like I wish I had my heart in this guy's body, because it'd just be like so easy, right?" But he didn't ever do anything with it. He could have been a professional wakeboarder, surfer, mountain bike rider. running back, you name it. He could have done anything you want to do because everything he did, he was gold, you know.
Sure.
But he just didn't have that work ethic, and he was scattered, and he couldn't stay focused, and you know. So that's the main thing that I think is important for athletics to teach our youth. You know, it's the discipline, the hard work. Because at the end of the day, you know, how many kids are really going to go do anything with this, right? I mean, and what value is it if you know, make $10 million but don't have work ethic and can't pass that legacy on to your child, right? So
yeah, it's really maximizing your potential, right? Like we all have different potential. Your buddy had high potential, but he didn't maximize it.
Right.
You know, you might not have had as much potential, but you maximized yours.
Right.
So that's one of our business slogans is to maximize athletic potential, which, you know, not everybody's going to end up like Christian McCaffrey. You know, there's a reason why he's the best running back in the NFL.
Yeah.
But can you be the very best JV running back, you know, you could possibly be, or, you know, whatever the sport or activity you're involved in.
Yeah. So tell us a little more about McCaffery. So you've coached him since he was a freshman in high school?
That's right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. We had the whole McCaffery clan at Valor Christian High School. So I had Christian in football for 4 years and track and field for 4 years.
Wow.
And just, you know, as you can imagine, a treat to coach, you know, very talented. But even more so than his talent level was just the way that he approached things.
Sure.
You know, you talk about checking all the boxes and doing all the things the right way. He was that kid. I mean, I remember he would find time during the day to take a nap because that was an important piece of his recovery and preparation for a game. The way he ate, I think he ate a steak before every football game. You know, he'd figure out a way to have a steak and just very regimented, not in an unhealthy manner, but he wasn't a party guy. He wasn't you know, all that stuff came secondary to his pursuit to want to be, you know, the best. And, you know, it kind of paid off, right? At the end of the day. And he still behaves that way. Probably gives up on some things in life to have that, and he'll be able to enjoy those things later in life. But yeah, I got to work with him, and I actually met him when he was 2 years old. When Ed came down to a camp in Florida, and I got to meet the whole family. And so yeah, long history with those guys.
Yeah. So did you know, like seeing him as a freshman playing ball, did you know, hey, this kid's going to be an NFL player, or was it one of those things you really had to cultivate him?
I'd look really smart right now if I told you yes, right?
Yeah.
We all knew something was really special about him. I mean,
Okay.
he started off on the freshman team like all the other freshmen, and after about the fourth game, we brought him up to the varsity level.
Okay.
And you know, he started scoring touchdowns, you know, right away, even as a freshman.
Wow.
And, you know, you just saw things in him, you know, not even in practice, you know, that you were like, there's something different about that kid. He's very talented.
Right.
The way he approached things, you just knew there was something different about him. So would I have said he had a high ceiling? Absolutely.
Sure.
Would I have said he's going to be the best running back in the NFL? I don't know. I'll say yes for the podcast, but
why wouldn't you?
Knew he was definitely going to be, you know, very special. So
right, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when I go to wrestling practice, you know, I look at 30 kids and I'm like, these 2 kids are special.
Right.
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 The rest, it's like, okay, well, I'm thankful to have them there. We all need competition, but they just don't have that thing, right?
Yeah.
Other kids don't develop it until they're, you know, they hit puberty,
Right.
14, 15. I had a kid that I went to school with, and he was, you know, not an athlete at all. And all of a sudden, like one year he showed up, you're like, who is this guy? You're like, who's the new kid? It's like, oh, that's Jaime. You're like, what the heck? You know, Jaime's 215 pounds all of a sudden built. He used to be 240 fat. You're like, what? You're like, where'd you come from? You know, he's got like a beard now and stuff. And it's just like, you never know what's going to happen when kids hit puberty, you know?
Sure.
But for the most part, you can, you know, normally kind of, okay, this is a special kid.
You could see it. Yeah. I mean, as an 8th grader, I watched him dunk a basketball. You know, he's like maybe 5'8", you know, goes up, dunks a basketball. He just moved different, you know, than everybody else. And just saw things, you know, I'll never forget a play he made in practice one day. It was like a walkthrough deal, and our quarterback threw it behind him, and he kind of reached behind him left-handed and caught it one-handed, kept spinning and just kind of jogged up the sidelines. And I don't think anybody else even noticed. It was just like a ho-hum deal. And I was like, that's special. Like not anybody can do that. And he just did it like it was no big deal. And he's a special kid.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I know. You guys did a workout at the facility, and just like looking at he was going down for a squat, and it wasn't a lot of weight.
Yeah.
You were, you know, working them through your guys' normal program, but there was just something in the eyes when he was, when he went down and felt the pressure, and before he exploded up, there was something in his eyes that like you could tell he is at a different level. Is there something ticking different? And I think, not everybody has that, but if we could just work under pressure and tap into whatever God's gifted us whenever that pressure hits. That's what it's all about.
Well, and having the mix, right, of athletes that we get to work with, and of course, we'd all like to be Christian McCaffrey, but to have kids be able to see what it takes to try to be like him.
Yeah.
If Gage could watch him train,
Sure.
it would truly motivate him to go, well, I need to do this better. I need to do that better.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of, the collaboration and having all the athletes in the same facility, is to see what it takes to get there.
Right.
Because everybody wants to be there. Everybody.
100%.
Right? If I said, hey, this is what it's going to take to get there, you'd say, sign me up.
Yeah.
Now, Garrett, here's what it's going to take to get there. Are you willing to do that?
Yeah.
That's a different deal. So, but at least they get exposed to it. They get to see it.
Right.
It's
So Christian, if you're out there listening, here's the deal. We want to videotape your next couple workouts and put them on the internet. We know you're a private guy, but we want to see it. The world needs to see the talent that God gave you. So share it. Let's go. Come on. If you're listening, let's go. So
it's awesome. He'll love that. He'll love that.
Calling him out for the record. Let's do it.
Then he's gonna be like, all right, Garrett, put some pads on. Let's go.
Listen, you can smash me if that's what it takes. I'll sacrifice for the rest of the world. Do it. Let's go. No, but I teach my son that, right? So there's different mental ticks that you can do in order to convert to a high performance mindset, and so Gage, I have him pace back and forth, right? And he focuses and puts his hood up, paces back and forth 10, 15, 20 times. Then I make him clap his hands 3 times, close his eyes and open them. And then, the mindset trick is that he converts to being a savage now. All of a sudden he's wrestling mode, right? He goes from watching YouTube, kicking it, eating potato chips between matches because he's, whatever, to okay, now I have to dominate and switch that mindset. But I think it's so important that is parents, we teach our children what it takes to convert your mindset from, hey, I'm going to relax today because it's Sunday and it's okay to chill and go off my diet and do these things, to it's Monday, I need to get up and handle my business, right? And so to train that and use athletics as a tool, whether at the highest level or even, just a low level, teaching children to convert, right, their mindset from relaxation to high performance is so key. It's that's the difference. And I think that's probably what you're talking about, what you saw in McCaffery, right? He's okay, joking around, whatever. All of a sudden the weight gets on his back. He goes to the bottom of the bucket in a squat and he converts his mindset, and you can see it in his face and his eyes, right? Yeah. And now it's this whole separate thing. And so being able to do that, control it, and make a decision when you turn it on and off, that's the real art.
That's right. Yeah, the mind's such a powerful tool, right? Mm-hmm. And so, to be able to flip that switch is a unique characteristic. Yeah. And I train, quite a few high-level athletes. Sure. The ones that are really excellent, they really kind of are elite, even amongst the professionals. They have that ability just to lock in when time is right. Now, some of these guys they're funny. They have personal lives. They do let down. But when they show up to train, when they show up to compete, it's the flip of a switch. And I think, even as business owners, right, we have to be able to do the exact same thing of, do you know when to turn it off, but do you know when to turn it on? And crank when you have to crank.
Right. I can remember for me, going on vacation used to be the worst thing, right? Because it's 3-4 days to get out of work mode, right? 3 days to relax, vacation's over, come back, and I'm in relax mode, and I can't, turn it back on to go the other way again. Or it takes me a week. I'm like, oh gosh, this is crazy, And as I practice more, right, switching on, switching off, and doing these things, I got better. But it's not one of those things that comes without a lot of hard work.
That's right. Yeah, it takes practice, just like anything, right? We talk about adaptation and stimulus. You just have to practice it so that when it comes time to do it, you can actually execute on it.
100%.
That's right.
So, moving forward, what advice do you have, right? If you could look back at your, former self 20 years ago, do you have any advice for yourself or others that may be coaching that you could give that you think would be, beneficial to the audience at large here?
Sure. I don't have, I think for as far as I go, I wouldn't change a thing, right? I think every failure, every success, every challenge, every environment that I've been in has molded, us to be able to be, put us in the position that we're in today. So I wouldn't change a thing. I think for the young trainer, the young coach, the young business owner, you can't go half speed, right? I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing that I would say is you gotta, have high expectations, hold the high bar of excellence, and work your tail end off for it. Whether that's working hard, or work hard at resting, or work hard at having
Yeah.
work-life balance. You got to kind of go, full overdrive, I feel like.
Yeah. And so I think, the real trick is how to create that pressure, right? When there's not a lot of pressure. So,
Sure.
I do a lot of, business coaching and helping guys scale business and stuff like that. I was working with this guy the other day, and he's like, man, I sold 90K last week. Like, you want me to wake up at 5 a.m.? I'm like, yeah, and he's like, well, why? I've got my bills paid for like the next 5 months, right? And so you've got to have that intrinsic motivation. It can't be external.
Right.
It can't be like, oh, well, I need to make money, right? The guys that make the most money, the guys that are the highest level athletes, they do it because they love the game.
That's right.
Right? They don't do it, like I think about like all the Cuban baseball players. Those guys aren't, out there playing baseball thinking about like, oh, I'm going to get a mansion one day. They're like, I want to hit the ball out of the park right now,
That's right.
right? Like, I want to catch this and dive over the fence to get it. That's all they're thinking about. So they're only focused at performing at the highest level. They're not focused on the results. So, where I come from, it's like, hey, enjoy the process, and the outcomes are inevitable, right? But you got to focus on the process, right?
That's right.
If you don't like your legs burning and like hitting PRs in the squat room, right, you're not going to ever be better because you don't enjoy the process.
Yeah. We talked about winning at life today a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And winning really is just a byproduct. It's a byproduct of all the hard work, the processes, the 5 a.m., early calls, and the flights and the travel, and, all the things that we do. Then the winning becomes a byproduct. It can't be like the focus, right? You got to focus on all the things that lead up to that. I love what Joe Burrow said in a interview the other day. He said, I win on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we don't win on Sunday. We win every day of the week leading up to the game. And I think that makes a ton of sense in training, in business. What are you doing before the moment, right?
Yeah.
And then you're set up for success.
Like with my son, we say, when you cry during practice, so you don't have to cry during the match.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's like, we'll take him to the very edge of the limits, and he'll cry in practice, right? And when he complains about it, I say, look, you can either cry now or you can cry after you lose.
Yeah, sure.
Make a decision. And
Sure.
so, when I put it to him that way, he's like, okay, because he remembers the time he cried when he lost, right? I'm like, okay, we're not going to have any of that. We're going to cry when we train.
That's right.
And so he's like, okay.
But what's the saying? They say, if you think training's hard, try losing.
Yeah.
Or sitting on the bench, you know what I mean?
Man.
So,
That the other day, that reminds me, Caden, last year, his football team didn't win a game.
Yeah.
Right? And he's very competitive. He's not the most athletic, but he's the hardest worker in the household. They had their playoff game, and they lost. They were thinking about the next week's championship game, and they lost. All the kids, they're 12 years old, they're crying because they think they were expecting to be at the championship. And, he was emotional, but when we got in the truck, he's all, Dad, because I had the camera out there. He said, Dad, you got a picture of that final score?
Yeah.
I says, what do you mean? He says, do you have a picture of the final score? I'm like, probably. I says, what was it? He says, 22-8. I says, why do you want it? He says, I need it framed in my bedroom for motivation because next year that's not going to happen.
Let's
go.
Right? And so, like, for a 12-year-old to be thinking like that, and like knowing, like, and then he also is like, I didn't do my part. Like, I could blame it on the coach for not passing the ball, but like he knew he didn't do his part. And I think that's just what in my house, I like extreme ownership, accountability. You guys know I had to face that in the most hardest reality, but I think as athletes, as men, as business owners, like, set the standards, and then if you're not living up to those standards, own it.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. It's really good. Well, I appreciate you guys coming out today. In closing, we've got Brian Kula here, Speed Town. Look for the franchise model. Look for the system. Look for Brian to kind of get out of the middle. Look for him to, utilize his athletic genius to continue to train the best. Really focus high level on, the best athletes in the world, and documenting that. So again, Christian, what's up? We want to video some workouts. We want to get out there and show others what it's like to train at the highest level. So these youth athletes that, Brandon and his Upswing Foundation are sponsoring can really see and utilize for motivation, because proximity is the name of the game, right? You've got proximity to the highest level business entrepreneurs. It's going to make you better. That's why we have conferences. That's why we have business expos, right? Same thing, you go and watch a guy's workout. I remember as a kid, we used to stop by Sierra College and watch the Niners practice. And it was motivating because we were playing ball that year, right? See these guys out there big as a house, running around. It's like, I thought about that because of the proximity. And so, if you're not coaching with somebody, find a good coach. If you're not around the right group of people, find a better group of people, survey the room, look around you. Is this where a winner would be, right? Find yourself in an old bar and a bunch of weird stuff's happening and you're an athlete, get out of there, right? Sure. It's not where you belong, So think about, the proximity to successful people is where you want to be because, success breeds more success and the highest level people need each other to level up. And as they say, iron sharpens iron. So it's a sit down. Here we go.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. Anytime, man. Look forward to it. All right.